Welcome to the Executives Lounge. This is your podcast host, Christine Fauner. We are officially in season 2, where we focus on redefining leadership, one amazing story at a time. Let's get started. Well, if you are planning out your summer plans for this summer, I have a fantastic guest on the show today. Dawn Bentley is coming to us from Minneapolis, Minnesota, and she is the executive director of Minnesota Fringe. Now, I had to first ask Dawn when we met, what is Fringe? So Minnesota Fringe connects adventurous artists with adventurous audiences. Oh my gosh, this is speaking to our people already. I know it. By creating open, supportive forums for free and diverse artistic expression. They do a summer festival, and then they also do dynamic year-round programming. And it's an artistic disruptor for local and national artists. So if you are an artist, take note now. They like to take bold risks, develop new ideas, and hoist themselves to the next rung of the artistic ladder. Dawn, I was so excited for today's guest appearance by you. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Tell us what Fringe is and how you came to be where you are today.
Well, how Fringe came to be was that there was a performing arts festival in Edinburgh, Scotland, and it was invitation only, and you had to be a proven artist to be a part of it. And some people were dissatisfied with that. They had art they were willing to share. They had performances they wanted to show off. They had messages and themes and genres that were exciting and new. So they set up on the outskirts of town and started performing anyway, even though they weren't part of the official festival. Well, pretty soon their shows were getting more audiences than the shows that were in the festival. So they called that the festival Fringe, and thus began a movement of wild, unique, new. So Minnesota Fringe came into the fold 30 years ago with our original founder, who thought, well, Minnesota has a really dynamic performing arts spectrum of people. And I think that we could do something big here in Minnesota. And we're one of the older fringes in North America, one of the larger fringes in North America. And we do, despite the fact that people think Minnesota is a flyover country, the rumor is that we have more theaters per capita than New York and Chicago. So I don't know, I think that we are in the top 3 anyway, and we have a pretty dynamic performing arts scene here. And not only do we support about 85% of our artists are from Minnesota, but we also get national and international artists that join us every year for the Fringe Festival.
Yeah, on the map. Can you give us an example of what we might experience at a Fringe Festival?
You will go to a performance that's about an hour long. It's very inexpensive. You don't have to know anything about the performing arts to be there. You will be immersed in a neighborhood that is filled with 8 different theaters, and you will have multiple shows to select from every 90 minutes. And you can choose clowning, drama, dance, modern ballet, all of it. Horror, devised art, comedy, solo performance, big cast, whatever you have in mind. And you can just take a risk and go in and see something you've never heard of before, but maybe heard a rumor about.
Well, we talk about jumping out of our comfort zones here a lot and going into those spaces of the unknown. And this sounds so fun. How does, I don't think they teach this in career pathway in high school. How did you find yourself the executive director of Minnesota Fringe?
I have a very twisted path that got me to this place right now. I originally went to school to be a microbiologist, and I spent a lot of time working in a laboratory doing research on transmission vectors of diseases. I also spent some time working for the Food and Drug Administration, connecting the dots between foodborne pathogens and outbreaks. And so those 2 experiences made me I'm a scientific thinker, right? I'm very methodical. There's a plan. I don't change anything unless I know how to measure whether or not it's effective. And also I know how to run a database, because that's what I did for the Food and Drug Administration. I stepped out of the lab once I realized that I'm too extroverted to be in a laboratory situation. And my
did you annoy your colleagues or?
yeah, we took a Myers-Briggs test, a very popular thing to do in the laboratory I was working in. And I used to think that my coworkers just didn't like me because I would come in like Monday mornings, like, good morning, hi everyone, how was your weekend? And I would see people shrinking. And it's just really a matter of me being way more on the extroverted scale and them being way more on the introverted scale. And I just was sort of sucking the energy out of the room by existing. But I did have a really good skill in knowing how to communicate because I wrote a lot of white papers and I worked with a lot of people on co-authoring like PhD thesis and stuff. So I started going into marketing and writing for scientific and engineering firms. And that turned into marketing and then business development for a lot of scientific and engineering firms. And I did that for a really long time. And it served me well because at the time I was raising children and I worked from home and I ran my own business and I got to set my own schedule so that I could put them on the bus in the morning and be there when the bus came home in the afternoon and go on the field trips and stuff like that. But it wasn't satisfying. It was a paycheck. And I am an aficionado of all things art. I've played the violin for 40 years. I've played in professional orchestras, rock bands, cover bands, all of that. I've attended plays my whole life. I have I love museums. I love any sort of arts and culture. I love architecture. I love traveling and all of that stuff. And I wanted to be an advocate for the arts. And so I kind of had a midlife crisis and decided at 40 that I was going to go back to graduate school.
We're starting to call that midlife awareness.
Midlife awareness. It was awareness.
We're going to be aware. We're going to make some alignments. We're going to make some changes to align. We're going to be whole people.
Right. Well, when my reasons weren't my reasons anymore because they were getting up and going off to college, I was like, what can I do for me and make it feel good to me that I'm doing something every day? So I went to further my education, thinking that I would always get a master's in biology, ended up getting a master's in business. And at the school I was at, they also had a master's in nonprofit. And I specifically got that second master's so that I could go and work in the arts field. Right away after I left graduate school, I was asked to be an executive director for a nonprofit that had been sort of meandering around and not been an official nonprofit, but and I had that freshly minted master's and I was like, I can help you become a nonprofit. I can help you create infrastructure. I can help you create process and procedure. I had done all of those things in my previous jobs, and I made a small little festival successful. And then I went and worked for another festival, and then I ended up at Fringe 7 years ago.
Yeah, it's interesting that you found yourself in the festival space. Did it find you or did you find it?
I think it found me because a lot of what I did in the marketing and business development space was a lot of event management, understanding that if I were to enact a new program or create something new or have a new process, that we had to know what the measure of success was. And my scientific brain knew that I can only change a certain number of dials and know in order to measure whether something was successful. So in all of the festivals that I've worked at in the arts, it has been a series of making slight changes to internal infrastructure things, and then measuring how efficient we can be and how effective we can be at our mission. But also what gave me the greatest pleasure in all these different places is that my one position can have impact on a lot of different artists, on a lot of different audiences. And it held the artist and the audience in the same regard. They were equally as important, that without one, the other would not have the same experience. And that to me is what is beautiful about the humanities. And that's what makes us human.
You're making me think about the COVID pandemic for a second when I'm also an aficionado of the arts. I wouldn't say I'm good at anything, but I love it all. And I just remember being so concerned about the artists because they no longer had a platform with an audience. But you're right. There has to be a dynamic between the audience and the performer, or there
Mm.
is no performer. You're just
Yes.
doing something by yourself.
Right. And for the performing artists, it was hard to do something online, and we have come up with creative ways, certainly. But there are also some artists who are like, I don't want to be looking into a Zoom camera or Twitch stream. I want to feel that presence. And there is something indescribable about sitting in a room and feeling the energy of all the people around you. I love rock concerts. You think about that, and anticipation about what is going to happen, and will they play the song, or will I fall in love with this piece, and how will I be moved? But I'm the kind of person who will sit at an orchestra performance and weep if the song moves me to do so. And one thing about Fringe shows, because they're very, very short and there's only 30 minutes in between, the sets are very pared down. And I'm the audience member that if you are sitting in a folding chair, pretending to drive a car, but you're telling a great story, I am right there with you, seeing that scenery go by. Like, I don't need the set to get into it. I just want to feel like I'm part of the story.
Yeah, that energy is really fascinating. It's why I love improv also. It's always so unpredictable. I love it.
Yeah.
You talked about really orchestrating these large groups of people that come together for this festival. How does that happen? And it's no small feat.
Many people ask I and my coworkers if what do we do the rest of the year, but it truly takes a whole year long to entertain 30,000 people. Our festival, like many Fringe festivals, are selected by random lottery, which means we have to go out and find artists who are willing to even apply to the lottery. Luckily, we've been around for 30 years. We have a pretty good reputation, but we're always reaching out to artists to ask them if they know about the Fringe and if they would be willing to apply. This year, we had about 515 apply, and there's only 101 shows in the festival. We did a pretty good job with that. But then once they're selected, this is where my database brain comes in. We start collecting all kinds of information about your show, about your cast, about what genre you're going to be, and then we assemble all of this information and we share it with the press to try to drum up audience. So if you're affiliated with a particular university, I might send a press release, hey, look at all this alumni that's in the Fringe Festival this year. You should tell your people about that. Of course, the standard regular local press will want to know about all the shows, but there's a lot of specialization that we do in our marketing. But because of a lot of the Fringe Festival artists, who is our primary people that we serve are the artists, are new to producing a show, we do a series of workshops with them to help them learn how to produce so that they can just concentrate on the cultivation of their craft. They can concentrate on their story, and we can help them market. And one of the ways that we do that is we have this very robust website. When we gathered all of that information, they actually were creating their individual show pages. So every show in the festival has its own page that tells you all about their cast and their crew. Once we get out and find audience, then we have to teach them a little bit about how to Fringe. And so our robust website is also something that you can log into and create a personalized schedule. You can search shows by location. If I just want comedy shows, or I'm only into dance, or I can only go on Saturday the 6th, you can find shows that fit into your schedule. Most audience members see about 4 shows during the festival. And so
It's so hard to choose then.
It is. The most you can see is 55. And there's 101 this year. So you really have to make some decisions. And then we allow audiences also to review the shows. So after 3 or 4 days of the festival, there's enough reviews on there where you can just go to the website and go, oh, look, this one's getting 5 kitties, because we don't give stars, we give kitties. This is a 4 kitty show. That's probably a good one. And then we bring it all together every single night of the festival. We have a meeting space called Fringe Central. It's right in the middle of our neighborhood. where we have free cabaret performances, a hype girl who hosts it all, and then people can just exchange ideas, like, hey, I saw your show, I'd love to work with you sometime, or I saw the best show ever, you should definitely check it out if you can get it into your schedule.
I feel like a lot of times shows or festivals are like, you go, you do this thing, and you leave. Yours is incredibly interactive before, during, and after. That's so cool.
Yeah, definitely. And it's been pretty fun. We give awards for our festival, people who fill their venue with the most, but also we give awards to audience members too. And I think we're pretty unique in that regard. We had one real stellar audience member who went fringing for years and years and years, and unfortunately she passed away, and so we named the award after her, called the Beverly, and we give it to outstanding audience members, so they are there on awards night too, not only to see their artist friends get awards, but to a chance to win their own.
Man, to be a good audience member, what does that mean?
I think showing up, being enthusiastic, being adventurous, go ahead, see something you wouldn't normally see, and then spreading the word. Bring a friend. We have passes for sale and stuff like that, and our passes are shareable, so if you get a 10-show pass, you save a couple bucks, but you can bring 9 friends to a show or go to 2 shows with 4 other friends.
You mentioned something about going from, I think, 2 employees to about 100.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
Yeah, we have 2 year-round employees, including myself. And then we have 1 part-time employee, and the 3 of us make all the decisions about how the festival is going to run. We put all of that together, and it's a good representative of, I'm administration, I'm making sure that the numbers work for our bottom line, and then I have an artist representative and I have an audience representative. So we are co-equal branches in our governing Fringe. Anything that has to do with the artists, we also have a really robust artist committee, and we run things past them just to test the waters and make sure that we are always representing artists well. And then we start hiring up, because when we are running the festival, we're running the venues with all of the box office, the ticketing, the front of house, the technicians, the lights and sound, all of that. So we have to hire all those people every single year. And then we take about another 150 volunteers to help us as well.
I think a lot of people would agree with me in saying, how do you lead that?
It's interesting. I think my natural leadership style is a servant leader. I'm here to help you. I usually hire people who are very good at whatever it is they do. If you're going to do the communications or you're going to be a sound and light person, I can't tell you how to do that, but here are the rails, that we can stay within, and I'm here to help you whenever you need it, whenever you have questions or concerns, or you're not really sure where to go next. And although we've done a lot in the last 7 years that I've been there to make process and procedures efficient, it's not ever going to be perfect. I rarely pull out the title for any reason. I never do it with my coworkers. And whenever I introduce myself, I always just say I work at Fringe. It's about all of us working together to get to that accomplishment, which is making 30,000 people happy and 400 artists ecstatic.
Absolutely. I talk a lot this whole podcast is about leadership and women in leadership. So often we shy away from the titles. I think we do that a lot, that we will say, well, I'm an executive director, but I'm with my team. And I think we do that because we have felt the bad parts of that power dynamic. It's this dirty space that we have had to deal with in our own careers. And so I'm glad that you're kind of pointing this out, but I don't want my staff to feel I'm playing a power role.
Mm-hmm. And I've been on an equal footing as far as title goes with other people, but there was still a power dynamic because they were male, older, and had been there longer. But yeah, we were equals.
Yeah.
And it was like, and who is this serving? It doesn't make maybe it makes that person feel good, but it certainly doesn't make me feel good or want to produce. And I think that's the feeling that with a small staff, I need everyone to produce and I need them to want to produce. And so I want them to feel empowered to make decisions so that they can keep moving forward.
Yeah. And I like that you also said earlier that you hire the right people that are really good at what they do. And then you bring that all together. That's a leader, right? Like that to me is a great example of, I know what we need. I'm going to help everybody come together and make that happen. And I'm just going to be right there with them doing it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's not easy. I mean, we get a lot of people that do come back, but I think I've changed the job titles and pretty much every year it's a different kind of staff, because we try something and we'll see it through and then we'll think, well, maybe that didn't work so well. Maybe we should split this job in two and hire two different people or merge these two jobs together. And so we've tried a bunch of things and I'll keep trying. I don't know that there's a perfect way to do it.
When we first met, it was actually the day that the news channels had officially called out that COVID was, quotations, over. That was the day we chatted the first time, was, COVID is over. But we talked about how it's not over.
No,
and not. So we talked about that being one of your biggest challenges. Would you say that the impacts of COVID are still your biggest challenge, or how would you chat about that today?
Yeah, I mean, last year I estimated that we would have fewer audiences in person because it would be the first time we were in person since 2019. It was much less. It was like 58% of our normal audience. And I know that we were dealing with variants and things were fairly uncertain.
Yeah. So you remind me, you said about 30,000 people are going to show up this year.
Yeah.
I feel like part of the fun of the whole festival is just figuring out what you want to go see.
Yeah. So people are already poring over every single show in the festival and trying to decide how they're going to fit as many as they can into whatever schedule they have available.
Well, and just for the listeners, as always, we will have links in the description of this podcast for you to be able to find information. I'm going to transition for a minute because we did talk about adventure and adventurous artists and adventurous audiences.
Yes.
And this community of women is really developed on this idea around adventure being a way that we create transformative perceptions of self over time. And so a lot of the coaching that I do and the experiences that I create are also based on this adventurous concept. Can you share a story about when you might have been quite adventurous?
Yeah, I have been adventurous for sure, and am not willing to give up without trying, right? So I've tried a bunch of different careers and a bunch of different other things, running marathons, half marathons, things like that. And I think the biggest adventure race I did was the Spartan, which was the Spartan Beast in Killington, Vermont. And this was prior to it being bought by Reebok. So it was a little more haphazard, but it was approximately 15 miles through the mountains, unchartered, completely self-supported race that I was going to do with some coworkers of mine. And they were all men and they were all on the same sweet level as me, but did not treat me as an equal. So these are the people I was telling you about. At the time, I was also a semi-professional bodybuilder. So I was in tip-top shape and I was ready for the challenge. And when we went to do this adventure race, they failed. You know, two didn't show up, and the one that did got injured like just a few miles into the race. And it would have felt good to my ego to just leave them all in the dust and say, see, I can do it. I am equal. In fact, I might be even better than you. But I think what I really wanted out of those relationships was to be a team and to feel like I was a part of the team. So I decided to lead by example. And I stuck with my injured teammate the entire race. And he kept saying, just go without me. It's fine, whatever. And I'm like, not going to do that. I'm not going to leave anyone behind. And so we finished the race slowly but surely together. And then I conscientiously chose not to give anyone a hard time about it and just said it was a real life lesson and it was working hard, and we finished it because we did it together. And if you couldn't make it for whatever reason, I'm sorry you didn't get to have that experience.
We have these choices, and I call these zingers, right? If it feels too good, it's a zinger. Like, don't do it, right? And that's our ego talking. Like, man, it would have felt so good to just smash that guy's face into the mud and just like stepped on top of him to get over that bridge. But it's a zinger. It's not going to feel good in the long run. What you really wanted was a real team. You really wanted people to have your back.
Yeah.
That's huge.
Yeah, it was. And I'm glad that I did it that way. I don't regret it at all.
Absolutely. Those unique experiences where you have to challenge yourself, mind, body, and spirit, are really those moments that you learn a lot about yourself. So speaking of learning, we are a very, very voracious learning community here. Do you have a recommendation for us that you would like to share?
This is pretty specific to nonprofits, but I follow the blog Nonprofit AF.
Which stands for as fuck. I won't make her say it, but it's nonprofit as fuck.
Yeah, and it's about badass nonprofit leaders. And I really appreciate the honesty, the innovation. They're always talking about new ways to do nonprofitism. And it's also nice to know that sometimes when you're in a job that you're the only person who does that thing, that there are other people who feel it too. And that's been really helpful.
Nonprofit leadership specifically can feel lonely because you may be a team of 3, but you're impacting entire communities.
Yeah, I communicate a lot with other World Fringe leaders and other festival leaders, local festival leaders. And that's really helpful because sometimes you innovate something for your festival, and then when you share it with someone else, they have an aha moment. And here we are all sharing the same struggles, same challenges, or very similar ones. And it's always been my dream to make sort of a Festivals Inc., where we just run that back end office festival stuff and do it for many festivals, just because it's hard to wear so many hats. And I often think if I hadn't had so many different types of jobs where I had the opportunity to learn how to do these things in a gentle way, in a supported way, that I couldn't imagine walking in and just knowing everything there is to know about databases and collecting information and writing grants and HR and hiring and all of that stuff. So it's just a lot.
Yeah, it really is. What's something that we got to know about you before we end our time together today?
Oh my goodness. Gotta know about me. I love to travel. And my oldest son just got a job as a pilot, so my traveling is going to get cheaper very soon.
Congratulations to both of
Yes.
you. Congrats to both.
Yeah. And I have 2 beautiful grandchildren. And when I'm in the off season of the festival, I've been able to prioritize spending at least one day a week with them, which has been pretty
amazing.
nice. And that's the benefit of being the executive directors, being
It
able to make that schedule.
Yes, I love that. And it tells us a little bit about what's important to you. Thank you so much for being here with us today, Dawn. I'm so grateful. It's been so fun. And I can't wait for next time. Be sure to check out the description and the information. Dawn, give us real quick, what's the website?
MinnesotaFringe.org.
Super cool. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us today in the Executives Lounge, where we bust open the doors, slam through the ceilings, and make sure that we have a spot at the table and that we are the lounge. I am Christine Fauner, your executive leadership expert, continuously looking for those executive leaders that seek community, continuous learning, and have a desire to find the next adventure. Join us next time. Join our Facebook group, Roam Your Soul, and you can also find us on Instagram at Roam Your Soul. And don't forget to check out the website for upcoming adventures, www.roamyoursoul.com. And if you're looking for that next executive level leadership coach, you can find me at roamyoursoul.com/Christine Fauner Coaching.